So when we talk about the examples of stakeholders, again, that would be the business analyst itself could be one of the stakeholder because they're part of the team. It could be another business analyst like you who would be working on the product, who has got experience of this before, or who's a domain business analyst, whereas it could be a technical business analyst working on the solution side of things, again, could be another business analyst. So very important, again, we need to be conscious of that. The customers, subject matter experts, people who are experts in that particular area, people who are good with healthcare, with banking, who are in retail solution for 10 years, 12 years, who spend their time in, for example, automobiles, on the ground floor, on the floor, shop floor, as what we call an assembly line, working on fixing the car parts and everything. They're the subject matter experts in terms of how a car is manufactured. They're the people who worked for 12 years, for example, in a Ford factory or in Toyota factory shop floor for 12, 15 years, trying to assemble different types of cars. They would be the best subject matter experts when it comes to the car manufacturing technology, automobile technology, the automotive parts, for example. They're the components and the supply chain and the various aspects associated with the automobile. They're the best experts to consult and get guidance on that. Obviously, they're not the right people if you want to talk about banks and currencies and different, maybe out of personal interest, one or two people might know about this. But then when you talk about the banking industry, banking, currency, and then retail banking, and then the different types of clients and accounts and transactions, portfolios, holdings, blah, 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 then obviously you don't expect a person who is working in the shop floor for 12, 15 years, knowing fully well about the banking industry, because then you would rather consult and get guidance and then get the overall idea and insights from a person who actually worked in a bank in that specific role for a good 10 to 15 years, who's got all the way from a teller in a retail bank to the salesperson to the person who's working in the back office, who's got the processing, the credit checking and everything else, who knows the processes involved in banking, creating of an account, and then from there the journal entries and the ledgers and the transactions, the portfolios, and then a trader who has actually got all the way from here. Those are the people who you would expect to know a little bit more about banking than a person who is working in the shop floor of a Toyota plant. So that's where we talk about subject matter expertise. It's about the expertise gained not by studying, not just by qualification. Perhaps that is one aspect of it, but more by experience of working in that area, in that field for over a period of time. It's not just 1 year and then coming out as, yes, I'm an expert. You can't say that. Similarly, a doctor who's a surgeon in, for example, the in the cardiothoracic surgery, if that is a person, you want to actually try and develop some kind of equipment around the cardiothoracic, you would rather talk to a surgeon who's got 10 years of experience in cardiothoracic, in the heart surgery, open heart surgeries and things like that. Those are the best people to actually give you insights into the functioning and the processes involved, the procedures, what are the areas that they look at, how do they go perform the surgery, what happens in an operation theater, blah, blah, blah. So you would try to consult them more than somebody who's not even a surgeon. So it's really important to understand this from the point of view of a subject matter expert. So business analysts is very, very critical for us, because not all BAs are SMEs in every area. So we should be knowing the people who know about the subject. So we should be able to understand more. We need to consult the SMEs in that area. We need to actually ask the questions. We need to frame the right questions, get the answers, and then be able to actually take those insights back into the product definition. So very important. End user, as it says, not every customer is an end user, and vice versa. So sometimes you are buying a product, but that doesn't mean that you're actually going to use the product yourself. You might be buying for somebody else. Especially in the case of B2B, the business to business, it is significantly different from the context of a B2C, a business to consumer, or a C2C, consumer to consumer domain. So it's really important to define the context of who is purchasing the product, the customer, vis-a-vis who is going to use the product. So in the context of B2C, you've got a purchasing manager, you've got somebody who's placing the order in the context of purchase department, whereas the actual product would be used by the factory workers and the people in the factory, for example. But they don't have the access nor the privileges to be able to place the order. So in that context, in the B2C, B2B context, sorry, the customer definition is totally different from that of an end user. So you need to be able to understand that, and you can clearly differentiate between these two in every context. Operational support, the people who provide the support to be able to get something off the ground to make it happen, the people who manage the infrastructure, who actually would give you the support for setting up your networks, make sure that the product is up and running. Those are the people who are in the ops support, and that's why, again, it's important to identify these stakeholders as well. Project manager, again, very important, very relevant, the authority and the person who can actually kind of issue the approvals to some extent, connect you with different people who have got the authority to actually take decisions on behalf of the sponsor, for example. And they're the people, the project managers often are the people who could actually connect you with the external stakeholders, or the senior management within your own organization, or the other departmental, other team members, other team managers, QA, QC. So you can actually kind of get access to all those different stakeholders via the project managers. Again, very important. Regulators, very, very important, because we are talking about the different types of regulators and domains. For example, in the context of automobile, we've got different regulators when compared to finance. So and again, if you talk about retail, you've got different kind of regulators as compared to healthcare. So we need to be aware of the regulators and their regulations, the laws that we need to abide by, and comply. The compliance to those regulations and laws is very critical. Otherwise, we might get slapped with a huge penalties if we don't abide, if we don't comply. So very important. Sponsor, we're talking about the sponsor being a key stakeholder in any initiative that we're talking about. So it's important we keep them engaged, we keep them abreast of what's happening on a day in, day out basis. If there are any problems, let them know firsthand, because they're going to understand, and then perhaps even help you take a decision better and quicker. So suppliers, again, very, very important, because you're talking about some of the components that could be coming in from the vendors. And then again, we're talking about preferred vendor management, preferred vendors, the vendor list that we would maintain as part of the organization, and how you would maintain that kind of relationship, because again, it's all as part of the value chain. You need to really know where the components are coming from outside, who's supplying what, how do they come inside our organization, and what are the process involved to turn those raw materials into the final product. And once it is there, how can we actually deliver it to our distributors, our retailers, and from there on into the customers? How can we make the customers get their hands on our product? So all this forms part of the supply chain, as we call, or the value chain. So very, very critical. Testers, very important. We've been talking about different kinds of testing, the performance testing, not just functional testing, but performance testing, load testing, stress testing, security testing. And as we talked about, pen test or penetrative testing, which is about making the product or application hacker proof. So all of these are basically different types of testing, and automated testing, for example, is very critical for agile product development. So all of these are going to be the stakeholders, and different examples, different types or different versions of stakeholders that we need to interact with on a day-to-day basis. So when you talk about the context of product development, for example, senior management, CXOs, we discussed these. They're going to be the key stakeholders in a product development initiative. If you're trying to work on a change management, change program initiative, they're going to begin, or even a process reengineering, process improvement. All of these would actually have the key stakeholders, the senior management, director level of personnel as the key stakeholders. They drive the whole project forward. Product manager, director, project managers, ops teams, project teams, pre-sales, sales support, business development, marketing, product development team. And then we're talking about the business analyst sitting here, who who's actually kind of the fulcrum of all of these different stakeholders. And then we interact with the customers, um, with the end users. Some, as I mentioned, customers could be different from the users in some context. So you need to really have a clear differentiator. And then any other key stakeholders apart from this, the suppliers, the regulators, the competitors, as we were talking about, even those could be the stakeholders sometimes. You need to understand what they're up to and try and emulate their initiatives, their processes, their frameworks. Sometimes it's important to do that as well. So competitors also are critical stakeholders that we need to beware of.